the coming global hyperinflationary depression. Get gold and silver. So is this Russian crisis going to cause a global hyperinflationary depression? Or could we see a global deflationary depression? Well, to work that out, let's get to the video and see what Jim Rickards has been saying lately. And friends, this is why we own gold right here, to protect our wealth, to protect our savings. The price of gold in Russia has risen by nearly 40% since Friday. That would be the equivalent of gold rising by $750 overnight in US dollar terms. That's how quickly value can be erased or transferred. Fiat currencies are a store of risk and devaluation. So yes, the ruble has crashed, but gold priced in ruble has increased nearly 40%. And that is why we own gold. It is to protect us from inflation, from the devaluation of currencies. So just imagine if you're a Russian right now with no gold. Your rubles are just being devalued by a large amount daily. This is why you want to have gold and silver. Gold and silver. So Jim tweeted this. Here's what Biden's team of amateurs don't understand. Every payment, every trade has two sides. When you blow up one side, aka Russia, you also blow up the other side, the world banking system. Linkages are dense and immensely scaled. This could be the worst liquidity crisis ever. And this is what Zoltan is warning about as well. Yeah, interesting. And here Jim retweets and comments on a tweet by Bill Ackman. Bill said, I wouldn't want to keep money in a bank that can't access the SWIFT system. Once a bank can't transfer or receive funds from other banks, its solvency can be at risk. If I were Russian, I would take my money out now. Bank runs could begin in Russia on Monday. Now, Jim says this may occur, but what happens in Russia doesn't stay in Russia. Ackman's egging on bank runs, but they're never local, always global. This will spill over into a global liquidity crisis within days. Count on it. And as I shared in my last video about Luke Groman and the gold situation, I have been taking cash out of the banking system. So, obviously I've got the physical gold and silver outside the banking system. And I've got some other commodities as well outside the banking system. But I'm also keeping very minimal cash in the banking system. So I just thought this tweet from Jim was pretty, he retweeted Jack. So Jen Psaki says Biden wants to reduce our dependence on foreign oil by using green energy, not by expanding US energy production. Jack says, when you have no idea how the real world works. Oh man, I tell you, I'm doing my head in, eh? I've just been getting so frustrated with, I think you guys get it. So Jim says, no doubt Russians are encountering greater resistance than expected, yet before one gets caught up in media cheerleading, consider Russians making large gains along Sea of Azov. Focus on capturing critical energy infrastructure is working. 500 tanks now surging on Kiev. So Jim says here, please allow me to simplify the SWIFT discussion. Russia doesn't get dollars for free. They get dollars for oil. If you ban SWIFT payments, Russia will stop selling oil. That's about 9% of global output. There's an energy shortage already. The result will be a global depression. And some have argued and said to me, Steve, that's just what Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and the globalists want. They want us all to own nothing and be happy. They want us all to be their serfs. And, inflation, interest rates, whatever tool they want to use, ban, fossil fuels, or, just make life almost impossible for us. Global depression. And this is where I think Jim really comes into his own. Like when it comes to kind of warfare, economic warfare, financial warfare, all this sort of stuff, he's well researched. And just talking about Putin not having a shock and awe type campaign, Jim says study General Meade at Gettysburg. He didn't do shock and awe. He retreated at first, kept huge reserves, and used them sparingly. He won. So be very careful, guys, what we're seeing on the media and listening to our politicians. We've spent the last 2 years being fed a lot of BS from the media and from our politicians. And all I say is, as a wise man once said, there's three sides to a coin. There's heads, tails, and the edge, and you want to stand on the edge and look at both sides. So all I will say is just look at both sides. Look at everything that's going on, and don't be told what to think. And don't even listen to me. Fact check everything I do and I say. I have opinions and I share them. But don't just swallow everything that you hear and see. Do your research. Ain't it funny how saying do your research is now some, oh yeah, just watch a YouTube video or something. It's pretty pathetic how people get called different names and that, because they want to read, they want to look at both sides of any debate, whether we're talking economic, political, whatever. So Jim here retweets Kelly O'Donnell. Kelly says, senior officials say by removing Russian banks from the SWIFT system that connects financial institutions worldwide, affected banks would need to place calls or send faxes for each transaction to another bank, effectively knocking them out of the modern financial world. Jim says, hey, Kelly, I worked at Citi when you were in middle school. We used telephone, telex, and physical code books. The fax was avant-garde. It all worked fine. Guess what? They still work. Good old Jim. So Jim here retweets The Economist. The Economist talking about President Zelensky. He has carried himself with dignity, strength, and dash of humour. Jim says, typical The Economist nonsense. Yes, Zelensky has been a war leader, but it's a war that never would have happened but for his arrogance, short-sightedness, and blind in faith in the feckless Biden administration. His people will pay the price. And here Jim says, if you look at the membership of EU, NATO, and the SWIFT Executive Committee, there's a huge degree of overlap. If SWIFT kicks out Russian banks, which we know now they have, I'm not sure that Russia will care about legalistic distinctions. They'll see SWIFT as NATO. This thing is moving towards that right there, I won't say, very quickly. Let's hope Jim's wrong about this. Let's hope that cooler heads can come to the party, can come to the table. Yeah, it doesn't feel good, hey, on the back of the, you know what, and then coercion and mandates and a whole heap of other things, won't even go there. And now this. We know that the monetary system is on its last legs. The US dollar is a reserve currency. Not just me saying that. Jeff Gundlach, the Bond King, the real Bond King, that is. Felix Zulauf, Stan Druckenmiller. They're all saying that we're on the last legs of the US dollar being the global reserve currency. So here Jim says, Swift primer, if you ban some banks and not others, there's an easy workaround by using banks not banned. Foreign banks confront you by leaving beneficial owner line on Swift MT form blank. If central bank can pay send, they can act as fiscal agent for banned banks. And Jim did this interview. When was it? I don't know when it was, but it goes for a minute. So let's have a listen.
All these countries are trying to get out from under dollar hegemony, and that's going to happen.
And then there goes the power of the U.S. to impose these sanctions, right?
Correct, because if you, first of all, they're all building alternate payment systems. Even the German foreign minister the other day said Europe needs an alternate payment system. They could do cryptocurrencies. I'm not saying buy Bitcoin. I don't like Bitcoin at all. But you could create a new cryptocurrency with a distributed ledger with China and Putin. So imagine a Xi coin and a Putin coin. They could denominate it in SDRs. That's a special drawing right. That's the world money that comes from the IMF. They could back it up with gold. And notice that the dollar is not involved. Everything I just described doesn't involve the dollar. So that's why this could, if the U.S. doesn't reassert dollar hegemony, one good way to do that would be if the U.S. started buying more gold. I don't expect that to happen, but that would be part of my advice. If the U.S. doesn't do that, again, this whole alternate system, it's being created now. This is not science fiction, but it could affect the dollar very, very rapidly.
And I did a video earlier this year, gold-backed cryptocurrency, where Russia have been looking at and building a alternate payment system. I'll put a link in the description below. If you haven't watched this, do so. So Jim here says, when you see things that look stupid, but the people behind them are not stupid, you have to ask, what is a hidden agenda? The White House actually wants higher energy prices and higher prices at the gas pump to end the use of oil and gas. Ukraine helps their Green New Deal. And Jim retweets a statement from President Bush on Ukraine. He says, here's the George W. Bush statement on Ukraine. Bear in mind that Bush is partly responsible for the war by insisting that Ukraine join NATO. That was a bad idea in 2008, and it's still a bad idea. It's the main cause of the war. And here Jim retweets Secretary Blinken. The sanctions will have no material effect. Instead of posturing, Blinken's job was to prevent a war. A simple agreement not to include Ukraine in NATO would have done that. Blinken was too busy posing to perceive real politics. And I'll finish up with this tweet. So Jim says, I'll give Zelensky points for standing up, but his real job was to act in the best interest of Ukraine to avoid a war. A simple agreement not to join NATO or getting something in return would have sufficed. He failed. Instead, he threw in his lot with the... I'll let you guys finish that. Anyway, guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, or I am getting feedback that many of you that were subscribed have been unsubscribed by YouTube. So if you can resubscribe, that would be great. Love to see your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Everything that Jim says here is obviously Jim's opinion. There's many things I agree with Jim on, many things I disagree with Jim on. But what I love doing is looking at two sides of the coin on all subjects, whether it's economics, finance, financial markets, politics, all of this. I like looking at both sides of the coin and making up my own mind. And I suggest you guys do the same thing. Don't listen to me. Well, listen to me, but listen to others and then make up your own mind. Anyway, guys, take care, and I'll see you all again on another episode of Finance Uncut.